So welcome back. We're going to go through the Q2 results for 2018. My name is Jonas Tellander. I'm CEO and founder of Storytel, and on my side I have...
Sofie Zettergren, CFO at Storytel.
So Q2 of 2018 was a really exciting 3 months for Storytel. And let me run through some of the highlights. The subscriber base is 47% up year on year compared to Q2 last year, which I think is great. We're well on track to reach the 800,000 subscribers we set out to reach this year. And the average for the quarter was 621,000. On streaming sales are up 43% year on year and landed on 239 million krona in Q2. And I think we will actually reach 1 billion Swedish krona this year, 2018. We're still on track for that. On the international side, international streaming sales now makes up 47% of total sales. So Sweden is still a majority, but we think that from next quarter Q3 that will actually alter.
As usual, we present a forecast in this quarter for Q3, and then we will actually surpass 50%, which has been a goal for this year.
And on our expansion side, we're now on 12 markets?
13 actually.
13 markets.
Italy was the number 13.
Italy was number 13 and came in after United Arab Emirates and Turkey in Q2. So now 13 markets is where Storytel is at.
Yeah, and actually we're live in 13 countries, but we're actually active in 15. So we presented some more markets where we are in the so-called preparation phase.
Yep. And 6 of those markets are launched in the last 12 months, I think.
Yeah.
And then we had a really exciting launch of our first hardware product at Storytel, the Storytel Reader. So an e-ink device for reading ebooks.
Yeah, been used a lot during the summer vacation.
Yeah, and we're really ecstatic about it, and we have incredibly good reviews from customers that kind of falls in love with this little device and starts using it a lot. So that will be exciting to track the ramp up of that in coming years. And then finally, Sofie, we have announced something about our listing.
Yeah, exactly. So we announced that before end of this year, we will change listing from previous Aktietorget or Spotlight Stock Market, as it's renamed to First North. So we're working towards that, and there are of course several reasons for that. I think it's a natural step for Storytel, given the size of the company, but also it will be easier for international investors to invest in Storytel, and we have a lot of employees globally who want to buy shares, and this will make it easier for them.
That's going to be cool.
Yeah.
We have Derek with us on the line.
Hi guys, thanks for having me again this quarter. This time I'd like to start with a question relating to one of last quarter's most exciting news, that is the launch of the Storytel Reader device. It seems like this new revenue source has quite the potential. Looking at the low penetration rate of ebooks in Sweden compared for instance, the US, and the fact that you sold out your first batch of deliveries almost immediately. At this point, what are your expectations, and is it something that you could quantify?
Exactly, the Reader just been launched, and we believe that ebooks has a huge potential on the Swedish market, but also on many of our other Storytel markets. Looking at the US, the Kindle and other e-ink devices in the US have sold, I think, close to 100 million copies in these first 10 years. Looking at the Swedish market, for instance, the e-book market today is really small, and I think there's been sold maybe 100,000 devices or something. So you see huge potential here if you just get the right device out and have people love it. We're learning as you go, you could say. We launched and sold out the first stock that we got in, which was nice start.
Yeah.
But we think that in order to take the market to big volumes, we will need to update the device on a couple of parameters. One of them being, for instance, the audiobook listening possibility, which we will add before the end of this year.
Yeah.
The international business continues to show very strong momentum. Again, as you posted a very high subscriber growth of 83% year on year in the quarter. What markets are currently contributing the most to overall growth in the international segment? and which markets do you expect to contribute the most in coming quarters?
Yes, that's right, Derek. So looking at Q2, the growth from the different markets where we're actually ramping up or investing marketing in. So if we exclude the countries in the preparation phase, such as India and UAE, all countries are contributing almost equally to the growth in Q2. So no real surprises there, and according to plan. Going ahead and looking a little bit into Q3, we give a forecast where we think we will grow in total with around 100,000 subscribers. And looking at the international side, the bigger markets are the one that contributing the most in absolute figures. So we have had yet another great summer in both Denmark and in Norway. But really all markets are contributing, and it's really nice to see also some of the newest markets like Turkey is off to a really good start.
Yeah, and also Iceland
is
really really nice, although it's a very tiny market. You can see really that we have like 3 clusters of markets. You have the profitable markets, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. And then you have now a pretty big number of markets that are scaling up, that we need to invest a lot of money in production, and we need to invest money in the awareness, in the marketing build up. But then we have a couple of markets that are not really yet ready to being scaled up. So those 3 clusters. But I think it reduces the risk a lot in the business now that we have many markets that drives the growth.
Yeah.
The contribution margin in the international segment continues to decline as you invest heavily into content and marketing. Looking forward, at what level should we expect profitability to bottom out?
Yes, so actually in Q2 we had a higher contribution margin than we had in Q1. There are a few reasons to that. One being that we actually managed to increase our market share of own content, so the amount of consumption that is done on our in-house content. So that's a really, really good thing, and that proves that our investments in content is really paying off. Looking at trying to set some expectation, it's a little bit difficult since in our segmentation reporting today we include all markets outside of Sweden into one cluster. And as Jonas said earlier, we try to group the countries into 3 different clusters. So in the scaling up phase now we have a lot of countries, but we also have there Denmark and Norway, for example, which are profitable. So I think, in order to answer your question, you need to look at all countries individually, basically, but also know that, we will continue to add markets, and the profitability level will depend on how many markets we have, in the more mature levels and the more scaling up.
Yeah, and the logic behind our investments are really, do we think that we will get more value if we make the investments now in the brand awareness lift up or in the production catalog lift up? And that's really what drives the decisions. And then we've seen that already, 3 markets are profitable. We think that there will be 1 or 2 more markets hopefully coming in next year as becoming profitable. And then we'll just keep investing.
Yeah. So as long as we have a good ROI on each customer that comes into the service, given the small size of the new markets, even though each customer will be profitable on the long term, marketing relative to sales is quite high.
Yep.
Looking at the international business and the expansions, what have been some of your key learnings? Could you perhaps elaborate on some of the differences between how different markets behave, looking at, for instance, the Netherlands, Iceland, Russia, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, key learnings from expansion, I'd say number 1 is always to get a really, really good country manager in place, a really good leader for the local market that can recruit the right team and then, work hard and make the right decisions on everything that needs to be done. We've seen that, when we have the right country manager in place, typically we get a really, really good start. And when we don't, it takes a lot longer. So be extremely careful about that. Yeah. And if you look at what we've learned over time, I'd say we're much, much quicker to scaling up a market now than we were 3-4 years ago. I mean, now we ensure that we don't make the same mistakes that we made then, and ensure that we have a really again, strong team in place, and once we have that, we build up the catalog, and once we have the catalog in place, we start to do the marketing. It really follows that kind of three-step ritual in every single market. And we can see that the market like Poland, Finland, Iceland, Russia, for that instance, they all have really, really good growth now, and have accomplished that in just a year more or less.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course each market is different, but that's maybe not depending on how we operate. But I mean, comparing Iceland to Russia, for example, it's two very different markets. So things like, are the customer used to pay with credit card, and how does the reading habit looks like? And I mean, in India, for example, they are always on the top of the countries that read the most. Russia as well. In Iceland, I think every 10 person has written their own book.
What's interesting is that you can take a really small market and get to the first 10,000 subscribers, maybe even quicker than you can for a really big market. But then, of course, the potential kind of flattens out because there's only that many inhabitants in that market.
Yeah.
In Sweden, it's quite impressive that you've already reached over 3% of the populations as subscribers of your service. What's a reasonable penetration rate do you consider at the moment in a mature state? And what are reasonable long-term margin assumptions looking at contribution margin and EBITDA, for example?
Yeah, that's true. In Sweden, we are, I think, above 3%, even close to 4% adoption rate, and I think the same actually in Denmark now, and soon in Norway. I think those markets are still, they're not mature, they're not the end game, so I think there's still potential to increase those markets by maybe 50 or even 100% on top of where we are now. Whether that's transferable to a big market like India or Russia, I think that's remains to be seen. It's a lot bigger challenge. If you then switch the focus to the margin assumptions, I think that what we're operating under in Sweden, as you can see from the report, is roughly a 30% contribution margin, and then you need to net off the fixed costs from that, which means you should land somewhere around 15 to 20% profit margin or EBITDA margin. And that's our target, I think, for all markets going forward over time.
Yeah, and I think what could have an effect on on where we put the cost in the P&L is that in newer markets, such as in Russia, for example, where credit card is not as common to pay with, we have introduced in-app subscription, so both for iPhone and Android, and those fees are a little bit higher, but on the other hand, it will be easier to get that customer to try out the service.
To get down the marketing cost.
Yeah, exactly. So customer acquisition cost will probably go down.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, those were my questions for this quarter. Thanks again very much for having me, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Derek.
Yeah, thank you, Derek.
I think to wrap up, a good quarter, Q2, good growth. The forecast for Q3 looks amazing as well.
Yeah, I think maybe we can just touch upon that a little bit. We have a good growth both in Sweden and in international markets. So in Sweden, we think we will grow with around 25,000 subscribers in Q3, so really strong quarter, and overall over 100,000 paying subscribers. So that's nice. Yeah,
smiling faces. And then we have, for the second half of the year, always the print publishing business ramping up. So with Norstedts and the People's Press in Denmark, we typically see much stronger sales in Q3, and then in Q4 it really peaks with the Christmas season. So that's going to be exciting to see. Yeah. So thanks for now, and bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.